Hi,
Yeah.
Jillian. Thank you
Hi.
for speaking with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really happy and excited that you asked me to do this with you. I'm very excited about it.
Absolutely. So, we're talking about your new book, your forthcoming book, your first book. Is that right?
That's right. That's right.
Perfect. Well, let's start out with some introductions. I'll go first. I'm a certified in house counsel coach and the founder of Pathless Coaching. I help lawyers and companies thrive in their careers through mental fitness, leadership and performance, and career coaching. And we actually met through our shared experience getting our coaching certification at Brown. Um, many of my clients, they struggle with a lot of the topics that are front of mind in your book. So I'm really excited to discuss them today. Over to you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I love the work that you're doing. And I love that you've carved out this niche here with being an in-house counsel lawyer. Or coach. So I'm really excited about that. And I know we're talking a little bit about my book, but I'm going to forewarn you that I've got a couple questions for you because I'd like to learn a little bit
Ooh,
more
all
about
right,
you
I'm
too.
ready.
All right. So
Perfect.
hot seat for you as well. So for me, I am an ICF credentialed executive and leadership coach. I'm also the CEO and founder of ISO Coaching and Consulting LLC. And what I do is I really help individuals leverage their authentic selves to enhance their leadership effectiveness. And then I work mostly with newly formed teams to increase their level of cohesiveness and collaboration to positively impact the overall organization and companies. I'm also, you mentioned Ag Leadership, and I'm excited to also share with you that I'm now a coach trainer with Ag Leadership. So I teach other people how to be excellent coaches as well. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis.
That's great. I'm sure they're glad to have you. Um, let's start at the beginning. So, why did you decide to write your book?
So this question for me is it goes back many, many years. I have wanted to write a book for the better part of about 15 years. And I always thought I'd write about leadership, but I guess I was never really motivated enough, which is what it comes down to. But I went through a really dark period in my life when I did not foresee coming. I was laid off from Amazon. My stepson was diagnosed with cancer. My parents both had some significant health issues that they were dealing with. And it was just a whole lot of life experiences that really put me in this very dark place. And so I lost myself in all of that for a while. And I embarked on a self discovery journey, which was the only way that I figured out how I could get back to myself. So thankfully, I came out on the other side of it being proud of who I am with all of my perfection imperfections as well. So and I had heard along the way from so many different people of all ages, races, genders, that the struggle is real. Like being authentic is a struggle. And I think we as people tend to shy away from those many aspects of ourselves that make us unique. And we try to hide those from others because it is what makes us unique. And so, with me and my self discovery journey, I found joy in accepting who I am and then sharing my experiences and processes is something I wanted to give back to others. And so, when that happened, I finally found that this is the very topic that I wanted to write about. And here I am with my book coming out. So,
That's great. I know
yeah.
I read your introduction, and yeah, I definitely identified with the idea that authenticity at a period in my life was sort of a dirty word, or at least a word that I
Mm,
didn't really understand. So,
yeah.
I appreciate you bringing it to the forefront.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Even for me, and I write about this in the book too. It was as my kids would say, cringe. It was like a word you hear, and I kind of
Yeah,
cringe. But then when
exactly.
I really, really explored it, it was like, no, this is something, and it just became really deep rooted for me, and something I wanted to share with others. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, what's the title, and how did you come up with the title for the book?
So the title is "Creating Excellence: The Joy in Finding You." And it's actually, and this person has no idea how much she really helped me. And at some point in time, maybe I'll either tag her or something, but I do want to have a conversation because her question was so impactful for me. So last December, I actually went through a certification course for the Leadership Circle profile. And that's the 360 assessment where you get rated from your peers and your stakeholders and partners and direct reports and everybody that kind of says how effective of a leader are you. So I went through that certification process. And in that certification course, there was an amazing coach named Jessica Agnew. And we were paired together to conduct our assessment debriefs. Of course, as part of the certification process, we had to do our own 360 leadership circle profile. And then we got paired with a coach, and you had to debrief all these different aspects about you as a leader. I was paired with Jessica. And one of the questions, she listened to my story, and it was really raw at the time. I mean, I was just coming out from underneath a lot of different things. I was emerging in that space of like, this is who I am, and I'm out, this is who I am. And so it was really raw. There was a lot of initiatives, I had a lot of really big thoughts going on. But she asked me a question and said, "Hey, love your story. If you wrote a book and you wrote about your story, what would you name it?" And
Hmm.
it took me a little while, and I remember kind of sitting there doing like I don't know what I would name it. But as I thought back through the last several months, prior to that time, the only thing that came to me is like I was creating excellence. I was creating a way for me to look at myself and accept all of me. And so we're all unique and excellent human beings. And so creating excellence was something that I said. The joy in finding you came from the fact that, like, when you are in a space, like, that came a little bit later, and I actually didn't put my title out there until this past probably May timeframe, because the joy in finding you was we tend to face a lot of different things about ourselves and kinda, like, shy away from them because, like, "Oh, I don't really like that about myself," or we sabotage ourselves, and I write about this a little bit in the book too. We sabotage ourselves. Somebody gives us a compliment, and we're like, "Oh, but, yeah, I don't really like the way that this looked on me," or whatever. So we tend to do that, and so really being in a place of acceptance and embracing who you are, I found it joyful. I don't like love every part of myself, but I can find humor in it, and I accept that it's part of myself, so much so that I embrace it in a way that I find joy now, and I recognize it. I'm like, "Oh, here's that side of myself." So that's where the joy in finding you came from. So between Jessica's question to me and creating excellence and where I am in my space and hopefully can give to others, creating excellence, the joy in finding you is the title.
I love that. And, I see it with my clients as well. There's this sense that the imperfections, as you describe them, you've got to kind of grip onto them tightly or they're going to take control or something like
Yeah.
that. And you're holding it very lightly,
Yeah.
and with joy and humor in a way that sort of disarms them, maybe. Is that
Mhm.
is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know if it's disarms them as much as it is recognizing that it's part of who you are. It comprises you and you can't escape it. So when you're in a different relationship with that side of you that you see as an imperfection, or it's really perfection because it's part of who you are. So being in a
Yeah,
different relationship with it and recognizing, okay, this is who I am. And,
yeah.
it comprises me, is just a different way to be than constantly trying to squash it and keep it away from
Yeah,
other people. And so it's just about embracing it and kind of going, all right, here you go. And when do I leverage this side of me? Because sometimes those imperfections or those, not so well liked parts of you can really serve you well. So it's really about being in relationship with all those different sides and embracing them and realizing when you can use it to your benefit or someone else's benefit, and when it's not appropriate, and how do all those things work together for the good of humanity. So
absolutely. Yeah. So I'm hearing a lot of themes here. One is self-discovery.
mhm.
And I know that last year, you launched a self-discovery effort.
Yes.
Sorry, earlier this year. And I think it's called I Am Me 100% Validated! Exclamation
Yes.
point.
Yes.
um,
Yes.
you referred to that as an evolutionary movement.
Mhm.
I'm curious what that means, but I'm just wondering how closely aligned the book is with I Am Me.
Yeah, such a great question, and thank you. So 100%, or I am the 100% validated, and thank you for emphasizing that exclamation point, because that's a whole time-based initiative. It is, well, first let me back up because you asked about the evolutionary movement. And so at the time that I was coming up with it, I had spoken to so many people who were like, "Yeah, I don't show my whole self at work," or yeah,
Mm,
I'm very compartmented. Like only this side of me comes out here, and then this side of me comes out there. And when I work with leaders and I'm coaching, what I find is that all of them, it's all coming out everywhere. It's just a matter of how much people are allowing to come out in certain situations, but we're always ourselves. And
Yeah.
it takes a lot of work to compartmentalize. It takes a lot of work to just like suppress the very things that the very pieces of you that make you you. And so when you begin to embrace those things and when you begin to leverage all sides of those, like sky's the limit, and you can really be effective and really positively impactful to other people when all of those parts come together. You can just be really effective. And so I called it an evolutionary movement because so many people just suppress it. So I'm like, what would it be like if we all just recognized who we were, embraced it, and leveraged it to do amazing things? And that is the movement part of it. And so, and
Mm,
then the evolutionary part is like we're constantly evolving as people. Like who I am today in 5 years, I don't know who I will be, but I know I'm constantly evolving and learning new things and learning a lot about myself. So we are in constant um evolution, if you will. And so that's how that became evolutionary movement. And the I am me 100% validated is just this is who we are. And we oftentimes look to other people for that validation. And what I realized in my journey is how much I actually did that. And none of the validation actually was as great as what I actually embraced and accepted myself. So the I am me 100% validated is there. So it's a time-based initiative. There's a workshop and then there's coaching sessions, and it's all designed around my own experiences, all the different questions that I had to ask myself and things I had to face to realize who I am and all the different aspects about myself, and then learn to accept who I am. So I turned that journey into a workshop and, like I said, coaching sessions to help other people in their self exploration and self discovery journey. The book is very closely aligned to that concept, only it's not time
mm,
bound. It's not as though you have to go through it with a certain amount of time and walk through the journey and you're done, like with the workshop. The workshop is about a 2 hour workshop. And at the end of that 2 hours, like you go your way and I go mine. We can come back together for
yeah.
coaching, but it's all time bound. And with the book, readers actually get to learn a little bit more about my story. They get to learn about stories of others who have gone through and continue to go through the self discovery journey, and it serves as more of a guide that's not time bound, but instead is rich with experiences to not only relate to, but to guide their own journeys. So they can curl up with the book, read a little bit, come back to it. It's not designed to sit down and read all at once. It's designed to help this journey that's constantly going. Like I said, I'm constantly evolving and constantly going through the journey. So that's what the book is. So they are very closely aligned, but not time bound, and something that they can just kind of curl up and read a little bit and then try out some things to really get to the point where they've embraced themselves and they're finding joy in all the things that they're learning about themselves.
Well, I can tell you just from reading the introduction, I had a lot of gears turning up here
Yeah.
and feelings that were stirred. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. What about any differences between the book and your other work?
So it's interesting. It's that's such an interesting question for me. Um, when I first set out, I have a media manager I work with, and he's like, "Well, I don't want to get you to get the coaching part confused with the I and me, confused with this book that you have going on." And I realize that for other people, it might seem a little disjointed, but they're all interconnected. And so there isn't a difference per se, but all of my work, again, is interconnected. It's all based on finding and embracing your authentic self and then
Mm,
leveraging these aspects of yourself to live a happy and healthy and fulfilling life. And so I don't believe that self exploration or self discovery is a one and done. I was kind of said that already. We're constantly evolving.
evolutionary, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But having those multiple ways of doing so is how my work is all interconnected. From coaching to I am me 100% validated to my Instagram live Mirror Mondays, which I do at 8 p.m. every Monday, to my speaking engagements. And then this is just also the one-on-one interaction that I truly find rewarding. All of it is all interconnected. And so it doesn't necessarily differ, but it's more of a complement to all the other things that I'm doing, which is all around authenticity.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, so, if you had to sort of, I'm assuming you wrote a book proposal and sort of put together a plan for this. It seems like a large undertaking, so I would assume that. What are your goals for this book?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up my book proposal and plans, because it's one of the things that sort of changed along the way, but not significantly. But my ultimate goal is to help others. And it's really about providing a just in time guide or resource for those who are seeking to understand themselves better or those who really just want to deepen connection with themselves. So, my hope is to provide a constructive and healthy, illuminated path to authenticity in which people can live and just embrace.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I a lot of my clients, they struggle with a lot of these issues, and I'm thinking of the authenticity that you're describing. So my clients are lawyers, and you give a story about this in the introduction about sort of feeling like you had to show up as one thing in one situation and one thing in another, and not really ever necessarily showing up for yourself or intentionally doing so.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of my clients, I call it, a saboteur, but one of their saboteurs is being a pleaser. And when you're a lawyer, you're in a service-oriented industry, and
Yeah.
um, you learn over the course of your professional training to be all things to all people. Whatever the
Yeah.
client wants, that's what you're supposed to do. Whatever the partner wants, that's what you're supposed to do. Whatever the CEO wants, it just gets sort of beaten into you. And by the time that clients seek me out for coaching, whether it's career coaching or leadership coaching or performance
Mhm.
coaching, mental fitness coaching, um, they're often they've often completely neglected that side of themselves for so long. And so one thing that I think you referenced a little bit in the introduction is sort of, and it's an exercise I do with my clients, which is, I'll have them list their strengths or the good things about them or their character traits or their values or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But once they write that down, I have them say, I have them go out to someone who cares about them, who knows them well, and have them make their own list of that person's
Hmm.
um, values, traits, skills, or whatever it is. And I know when I did that with my sister, she was able to identify, first of all, our lists were very similar, but there were some important differences. And the differences were things that I was just too close to recognize. Or, an example for me was I'm really good with directions. And my sister appreciates that because she never has to worry about Google
Yeah.
Maps or anything like that, when we're traveling or anything. And I sort of thought like, oh my gosh, I never thought about myself as being good at that.
Hmm.
But it was very validating, to use your terminology.
Yeah. I love that, and I love that you bring other people into it because we do see
Yeah.
ourselves a certain way, and other people see us a certain way as well, and so when you involve other people who are close to you and who know you very well, you do begin to learn, just that much more about yourself, and when you do the IME workshop, there's actually some prompts that I have in there about, like, something other people see in you that you're either totally bought into or maybe you didn't know about it before and now you're looking at things with a whole different perspective. And so, I love hearing you talk about that and also your clients as well. So
Yeah.
having your clients do this, I think is just so rich and the experiences and the learnings from that and surfacing new awareness for themselves is great. So thank you for sharing with me how much, and it is validating for me to hear that our client sets are drastically different, but your clients also struggle, with some of these issues as well. So, and it's interesting to hear that you did the exercise yourself with
Yeah.
your sister. I'm sure she probably had a lot of different things that she could have said about you too,
Well,
but
yeah, I didn't ask her about the bad stuff, right? Very intentionally. So she would
yeah.
have had a novel.
Yeah. So
Um,
I'm curious though from you, like I told you I'd have some questions here, so putting you on the hot seat a little
okay,
bit,
sounds
like
good.
so, a lot of my clients will show up and kind of like, here I am, and I want coaching in leadership, right?
Yeah.
So here they are, we're coaching around leadership. And why I really started, looking at this authentic leadership is, like I said, all parts of ourselves show up everywhere. So I'm curious from you if you see that same thing with your clients as well, that they show up for one thing, but then you do end up getting into a lot of issues around their lives, what they're experiencing and the struggle. And if that struggle that they refer to or that you're coaching them around is about leveraging who they are authentically in order to be more effective. So hot seat question for you.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you put it that way. I don't know that I put it in those terms, but that's
Mhm.
exactly what we're doing. It really is. And
Yeah.
so the themes from your book are really universal. And so maybe I'll give some required reading for my clients in the
I'd
future.
love
But
that.
yeah, oftentimes a client will come to me because they have the hair on fire problem in front of them is
Mhm.
X, right? How to manage my CEO or you know get my team to be more cohesive or
Yeah.
get a new job or whatever it is. But there's a reason. First of all, I believe that every single one of my clients can solve their problems themselves.
Mhm.
That they're creative, resourceful, and whole in the language of our the International Coaching Federation, under
Yeah.
which we were both trained. Um, but there's something that they're stuck on, and oftentimes that stuck thing is being neglectful of um, themselves and their authentic selves, not giving themselves or getting from others what they need.
Mm.
Um, and that can be personal stuff, it can be professional stuff, and it sort of runs the gamut. But it sometimes takes some time to realize that the hair on fire problem in front of them is I'm mixing metaphors here, but there's an iceberg
Yeah.
underneath. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I do. So thank you for that. I have such an appreciation for hearing you describe it that way for me as well. So thank you. Yeah.
So back to your book, what are some of the unique elements or features we can expect to read?
Yeah. So I do have some of my own stories in the book, and anybody who knows me, this is a really vulnerable place for me to be. Generally speaking, I'm a pretty private person, and a lot of that comes from work I've done in the past. I never really wanted my life out there for people to know, to understand, so being in that vulnerable space, is good. So that's a feature there. Has some of my own stories, but I also didn't want the book to be about my story or my
Yeah,
stories. I think it's really important for people to understand that we all go through this, or at least many of us go through it. So I've included a few stories from others who have been through that journey and who are on the other side of it, still evolving, but
yeah,
realizing like, wow, I found the greatest sense of peace and joy when I actually just embrace this instead of trying to fight it. There's some practical exercises that are in the book. So that's why I said you can curl up with the book and read it and go away, try some things, and then come back to it. So there's practical exercises. I've also got some quotes in the book too, some that have helped me along the way, and just other quotes and such that I think that might be helpful for people as they're on this journey. Some are motivational, some are just quotes, right? Just impactful quotes. And so those are some of the elements, some of the features. You walk away with the whole thing. How do you actually, once you find yourself, it's really difficult in this world that tempts inauthenticity. And
yeah.
so, how do you hold on to that? And how do you recognize those moments when you might it might be trying you to kind of conform rather than stay true to your authentic self. So there's a lot of tips in there about like how to actually cultivate that authenticity, that authentic side of yourself. How do you cultivate that and just show up for yourself every single day in an authentic way? So a lot of that to walk away with.
That's really interesting. So I think what you said was the world tempts in authenticity. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Explain that for me.
Yeah. And I do explain this a little bit in the book, so this is kind of a sneak
A little
peek here.
preview.
Yeah, exactly. So, what's interesting to me is we as humans, we from the time we are born are constantly pleasing others. We are
Mm,
constantly looking for validation. I'm watching, babies grow up in such a different way now. And I have an 18-month-old great nephew, and, he'll fall and we're all like, yay, because he's ready to cry because I just
right.
fell. But we're kind of shaping how he responds to this incident that just happens. Right. So instead he's like, oh, I'm not supposed to cry. All right, I'm going to smile and I'm going to get out. We
Happy
want
again.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We want that, and that's good, right? We're teaching coping skills, we're teaching how to appropriately respond to situations. But as we grow up, it really is like, I'm not going to do something because this person doesn't want me to do it. So we tend to start to conform. We please other people. There's a lot of things that we do that feel awkward. It's that sense of tug for us that's like, ugh. And one of the stories I bring up in my book is like, you've got a group of friends, they all wanna do something, you don't wanna do it. But 9 times out of 10, we're gonna go do it for a lot of
Sure.
different reasons. Sometimes it's not that big of a deal, we just do it because we know we're gonna have fun anyway. But other times, it's like we just go with the flow because it's easier not to create some type of conflict. We don't want, other people to look at us a certain way or what have you. So that tempting is always there to kinda do something that's against who you are authentically. So that's that tempts inauthenticity. And 9 times out of 10, I don't know, that's not a research stat. Although I've done tons of research for this book, that's not a research stat. Um,
Sure.
but at the same time, a lot of times we are drawn to just do what's gonna create the least amount of conflict, and that goes against us authentically sometimes.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about process. So,
Mhm.
can you offer us any behind the scenes stories or challenges you faced while writing the book? I'm really curious about this one.
Yes. Yes. So I've done a lot of reflection on this. And what I will say, it's a lot of work. Not that I didn't think it would be a lot of work, but at the same time, it was way more work. I'm like, I have these ideas, I have these thoughts, I have these, lots of different things. But putting it on paper, um, for the world to read was just intense. It really was.
Yeah.
So I will tell you the first thing was, and you've seen a very raw version of some of the things that I sent you from my introduction to a couple other excerpts from early on in the book. But it was a content drop. Normally, when I'm writing for an audience and I go back and I proof it and I make sure that it's great before I send it out. So that was
Sure.
kind of a first challenge for me was like just taking what was in my head and the thoughts that I was having and putting them on paper. And then trying to come up with, a chapter name for the content that I just dropped. And it was very challenging for me not to go and like type it up like it was perfect and, ready for people to be read. So it was more of just a content drop. So I had to get out of the frame of mind knowing that there were going to be multiple revisions and editors looking at it. I've already worked with 2 different editors and but again it was content editing, not grammatical and spelling or what have you, although sometimes it's hard not to fix those along the way, but it really was I'd
Sure.
sit down and just drop it. So that was a challenge for me. But also finding the time. So, I am married. I have 3 children. I have parents. I have dogs. I have lots of different things. My children were very active. As I mentioned, my stepson um, had cancer. And so there was just a lot that was happening in this space. So finding the time to actually sit down and write was very challenging. And so, eventually I got there, but it took me a while to sort of figure out what's my schedule. When do I write best? I'm usually a morning person, but I have clients in the morning. At the same
Yeah.
time that I was writing and getting into really the crux of the book, the root parts of the books of the book, my business was growing. So I'd started this business about 18 months ago and my business started growing and it was in line with my business plan. But the one thing I didn't have included in my business plan was that I was going to be writing a book. And
Oh
so being
gosh.
able to balance that and making sure that
Yeah.
my clients were first, but also recognizing that my book was part of what I was doing and that interconnectedness was extremely challenging for me to try to find the right time. So I've got these pictures and I'll post them at some point where I'm writing in crazy locations. I'm in my car. One time I was at a college, my son was playing basketball, and I'm way up in the stands where nobody was because I would take my laptop everywhere. And I had this like moment of, I've got to write this part of my book. So I went way up in the stands and I'm writing up in the stands, so just finding that time and being agile enough. So as a coach, this is where my be agile training came into, but being agile enough to, really just kind of write anywhere, block out noise if I could, and if I couldn't, go find somewhere to do it. But finding that time was, just kind of crazy. So being on such an aggressive timeline while the business was growing was just, and balancing the book demands and client demands, all of that, just super challenging, super challenging. But I got there and I finished my manuscript on time. So, but yeah, it was crazy, very crazy.
Yeah, I can imagine. And You know, I think I can relate to this because, you know, in my own small way, I'm sort of building my own business, as you know,
Mhm.
and have clients. And you know, the one thing I did this year in terms of my business was I said I'm really going to master LinkedIn, and what that meant was, you know, really committing to posting twice a week. Well, I wrote that into my business plan as, you know, oh, this will be good, all that stuff. But the payoff isn't immediate, right? In terms of the emotional payoff of, you know, mastering LinkedIn, it doesn't happen until the end of the year,
Yeah.
or sooner if I ever become a master at LinkedIn. But you know, I also the payoff from clients isn't immediate either. You know, one LinkedIn post does not equal a paying client. Um,
Mhm.
but it has really been rewarding to sort of just lean into the discipline of saying, okay, Paul, I'm going to post twice a week no matter what. And if I miss a week, that's okay, but I'm never going to miss
Mhm.
2 weeks. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so, um, yeah, it sounds like you had an external structure that was sort of moving you through this,
Yes.
despite the challenges. But I definitely relate to balancing, you know, a larger goal with the sort of minutia of every day.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And I believe you are going to master LinkedIn. I've seen your posts. I always love your posts. So you put things out there that are really relevant, and I've actually shared them and asked some of my clients like take a look at some of this information. It's all been really great. And so so thank you
Thank
for
you.
having that as part of your business plan to master LinkedIn. I think you're doing great, and I always love your content. So thank you. Keep going.
I thank you. I needed to hear that because I think, you know, for those of us in the legal industry, we're just trained and it's beaten into
Mm,
us to sort of drain our public personas from our
yeah.
public facing documents. Just focus on your credentials, where you went to school, how smart you are, you know,
Mm,
whether the comma is in the exact right place.
yeah.
Um, and so the free flowing discussion format of LinkedIn is really creates a lot of self limiting beliefs and doubts in me. So I'm glad to hear that it's valuable for you, and
It
um,
is.
I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting that you say that too. Like letting go of the perfectionism is difficult,
Yeah.
you know. And I mean, I can't tell you, I'll put out posts. I'm like, I read that 3 times and this is still like, how did I miss that? And I'll go back and I edit it. But then, of course, there's somebody who always says, oh, if you edit it, people go back and look and see what you edited. And so I got to the point actually where it's just like if they
Gotta
go
let it
back and
go.
see,
Yeah.
then okay, good for them. Good for them. They have more time on their hands than me. But and then
Exactly.
sometimes I just don't even edit it because I'm like, it is what it is. Like I'm just gonna keep
Yeah.
moving and I'm human. I strive to do the best, but at the same time, it doesn't always happen. I have to give myself grace. So keep doing what you're doing. I enjoy your content. So I love it.
I appreciate that. So, you know, it starts with LinkedIn. I know so many people who, you know, they start posting on LinkedIn and then eventually they've got enough ideas sort of flowing through the faucet
Yeah.
that they have a book coming. So, do you have any advice for aspiring authors based on your experience?
Mm. Yes. So I do. One of the things, and this was a challenge for me, I didn't bring it up then, but as you asked this question, what immediately jumped out to me is be all in. And I got a lot of
Mm,
feedback from my editors very early on. And then a little bit so far in, it's like either you're going to write the book. One of my editors said to me, and I love her, she says, either you're going to write the book or you're not. I'm like, okay. But
harsh.
I know exactly. And I had told her, I'm like, listen, be all in. And so my whole goal was to help other people. Right. And so she says, you can't pick and choose what you're going to write about. Either you're going to be all in and help other people and share different pieces. And if you're going to tell a story, you got to tell the story. Don't pick and choose what parts of the story you're going to put out there. Right. This is
Mm,
nonfiction, of course. So I recognize that as like, okay, yes, I was holding back, and it really opened me up to being all in with that. But
wow.
even the parts that weren't my stories, I had to be all in, and I really had to do my research to figure out like what can I bring to people. I couldn't be kind of like half-ass about it. Like, I needed to be able to do my research, bring in other people who are like experts. Brene Brown, for instance, like she's been doing this for a long time. So I did a lot of research. I followed, Brene for a long time, but like actually doing research for my own book, and there's so many others out there, but it was about being all in. So I
Mm,
couldn't kind of do half the research and still deliver a book that's going to help people. I needed to be able to do all the research. I needed to be able to tell the full story. And also, if I didn't feel as though I wanted the full story in writing, then it didn't belong in the book. And so there's a
that's a
lot of
great
those
point.
things.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, as an aspiring author, that's like first and foremost for me is just be all in. And then finding a rhythm, not letting go of the dream. First of all, like I said, it probably was the better part of 15 years that I was like, I'm going to write a book. And now here I am
Yeah.
going, I'm going to write a book. So, um, you know, chase the dream and actually do it. And when you find that moment, and you know exactly what you want to deliver to people. Be all in, be all in, and don't shy away from it. And then find the rhythm that works for you. If you're an aspiring author, find a rhythm. Sometimes for me, that was 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd be up and writing because that's when it fit into my day, or that's when I woke up with like I know what I'm going to write about
An
today.
aha moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna just go start writing. So find a rhythm that works for you and doesn't impact other parts of your lives either, because it can very easily take over your life and you can begin to um sabotage other areas of your life. So
Sure. Good
yeah,
advice.
yeah.
And I noticed on LinkedIn and Instagram that you've been doing some increased marketing for the
Mhm.
book. Does that mean you're getting close to a launch?
I am. I am.
Good. Good to hear.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. So probably starting around the end of May into June timeframe, I started kind of talking about something called green light. And that's basically when you have most of your book done. You've had editor, I've been working with a developmental editor along the way. And we've identified at that point in time that I'm about 70 to 80% there. And then come July, the beginning of
Woohoo.
July, it's like, yes, your manuscript is done, like delivered to my next editor, which is a structural editor. And that's someone who goes through and like really starts to do the nitty gritty editing. And so at that point in time, uh, we go to pre-sale. And so that's what you started to see on LinkedIn, Instagram, some Facebook posts around pre-sale, which started in August. That first week of August, I officially kicked off my pre-sale campaign. And that's basically saying, the book is coming, and there's a whole publishing journey. So my next phase, I'm in revisions now, and that's basically a couple of months worth of working hand in hand with an editor to revise the book so that it's magnificent when it gets delivered and actually published. But the publishing journey is long, lengthy, costly, all those kind of things. And so I'm in that phase right now. So the pre-sale campaign will last until the beginning of September. So I have roughly, what, 2 more weeks. I can't believe we're almost in September, but 2 more weeks or so where I'm just doing pre-sales. And that's where you can buy the book, but you also get exclusive access to my author community where I kind of give some behind the scenes. One of the questions that you asked was for a behind the scenes look. So I've got behind the scenes things that are going on in my author community. Um, there's some exclusive offers. Anybody who buys the book during pre-sale, you'll have an opportunity to read different excerpts of my book. And I may even ask for feedback to say, does this resonate with you? Get rid of it. Should I keep it? There will be things that people in my author community and people who have been part of the pre-sales campaign will read that the world will never see, because they will
Hmm.
read it and say, I don't necessarily know that this is of value to anybody. And I'll remove it potentially, unless it's that important for me to keep it in. So there's a lot of different things that are happening there. The other thing that's happening during this pre-sale campaign, and one of the offers that I put out there for either nonprofits or other or small and large corporations, is an opportunity to experience the services that I offer. And so some of the pre-sale packages include coaching or an IME workshop, or team coaching or something like that. And it's just a kind of a low risk but high reward. They get my book, they get signed copies of my book, they get access to the author community and all the behind the scenes stuff that goes into it. And then they also get to experience some of my services all for this pre-sale, campaign price. And hopefully that turns into long-term relationships. But if not, that's okay. And it's kind of, they've gotten
Yeah.
the services, they've gotten my book, which is something tangible to walk away from. And I know they'll benefit from my services, and then they walk away. So if it's long-term, that's great. But if not, for that price for the pre-sale. So that's what you're seeing out in LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. So the book launch itself, don't have an exact date yet, but we're looking at early 2025. So that January, February, staying away from the holidays and into the new year, which I find to
Yeah.
be refreshing and very true to me as well. So early 2025. So we are getting there. We're just around the corner, but a lot to be done between now and then.
That's fantastic. I love the
Yeah.
idea of having a collaborative process at the end there with
Mhm.
some trusted people who are sort of on board early and
Yes.
ready to give feedback and interested in digging in. So that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Um, so early 2025 book launches. Any sneak
Mhm.
peeks into what are the next steps? Any future projects that you're thinking of after that? Or are you going to write a second
Oh,
book?
my goodness, it's so funny. You're probably the third or fourth person in the past 2 weeks that's asked about it and or has referred to it as my first book. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Hang
It
on
might be
here.
my
Hang
only
on.
book. It might be my only book, but we'll see. So sneak peeks into future projects. Really, what I will say is there will be some book signings that will happen along the way. So getting those scheduled, and I'm also offering private book signings. So if you buy a bundle of books or something, and then you want to invite me to have a speaking engagement or a book signing or something, you can actually go to my website and sign up for that, and then we can schedule it for the spring. I'm actually doing that for spring, but I'm also
And what's your website? Sorry,
it's oh
mention that
no,
here.
great
Yeah.
question. Yep, thank you for that. It's ISO Coaching LLC.com. So again, ISO Coaching LLC.com. So thank you. So if they go there, there's a tab that says my book. And you click on the tab that says my book, and it's got some, just information. And then there's a form to fill out if you want to have a private book signing. And I'll get that. And then I'll reach out and actually schedule the private book signing. Um, Looking at spring right now. But besides that, I do have a retreat that I'm starting to work on now that, of course, is all around authenticity. This past January, when I launched I Am Me 100% Validated, it was at a women's retreat that was called Reset. And I'm now kind of moving that into a space, and I had partnered with somebody to do that particular retreat. But I'm now moving into the co-ed space and really honing in on that authenticity. So I'm looking to do an I Am Me retreat that will be chock full of all the different, services that I have and initiatives that I have going on, and being able to deliver some things around that retreat to people. So stay tuned. Haven't completely ironed out all the details there, but that's a sneak peek into what's coming.
Oh, great to hear. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. So what about you? So I feel like this whole thing has been about my book and my initiatives and stuff, but what about you? So I love hearing about your LinkedIn and mastering that. I love hearing about the clients and how you actually serve your clients through, helping them to, figure out what's making them stuck, and the values work that you're doing with them. But what are your business plans?
Yeah, so I've been really sort of in my head about the fact that I don't have a website, but as I said,
Okay.
I'm trying to master LinkedIn, so I'm focusing on the goal for this year. And so once I sort of get to the end of this year, maybe we'll work on a website. So
Okay.
that's a goal for next year. And in the meantime, I'm doing some volunteering work at my law school, Boston College Law School, working
Okay.
with the career services there and helping law students. Law school is just such a foreign environment. It's so different from undergrad, and there's so many people who want to tell you the way to do it. And my
Mm,
opinion is that a lot of times that advice is very, very it's valuable in the sense that it's mentoring, but it is not
mm,
coaching, and it sometimes doesn't reflect the reality of the job market today. As opposed to,
mm,
you talk to someone who's a baby boomer, they had a different experience going through law school and
sure.
getting a job than you do today, and so sometimes the advice doesn't make as much sense as it might have at another time. And so what I'm working with students on is helping them develop their own personal brand and kind of get out there and talk about the fact that they waited tables for 5 years, and actually that's really good training for being an attorney because it's a service oriented profession. And if you can sell that to a managing partner of a law firm, um, and communicate the value of that, then maybe that is a way for you to get a leg up on someone who went to law school 5 years, and has work experience, instead of going straight through from undergrad. So that's something I'm working on with my law school, and otherwise, I'm just really actively seeking opportunities to speak on various topics to professional organizations in the space with in-house counsel,
Okay.
those attorneys working for companies, the Association for Corporate Counsel, and
Mm.
In the House, which is another group, which I love the name of.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, so just really trying to get myself out there and be vulnerable and get in front of the people that I want to serve.
Yeah. So how does someone find you? Like, how does someone go, "Hey, I really want to work with Paul." How does someone find you?
Yeah, so my LinkedIn, it's
Mhm.
linkedin.com/Paul Wagoner. Pretty simple.
Okay.
Wagoner with an O. And I have a booking page there. You can find time in my calendar to speak with me on a chemistry call, and just to see if it's a match. And happy to have a coffee chat with anyone. There's a link there as well about
Mhm.
opportunities for speaking, or just to kind of catch up and see if it makes sense to connect.
Yeah, that's so great. I will tell you, I know we met, it's been less than a year.
It has been,
It has
yeah.
been less than a year, but one of the things that I will tell you is when we first spoke, just your genuineness just radiated. And I really appreciated your passion, your work, the things that you're doing, your dedication to clients, and really hoping to get it right for your clients. And I just really appreciated that. And so I think anybody who chooses to work with you or is just even remotely interested in, like, you know, who's Paul? I really would encourage them just to sign on the dotted line because just what you do and how you do it, I'm amazed by it, I'm impressed by it, and I'm just really, really grateful that our paths have crossed. So I just wanted to kind of publicly share that with you. And I'm glad to be in your orbit.
Absolutely, Jillian. Thank you so much. I
Yeah,
appreciate
you're
it.
welcome.
It
You are
was such a
so
pleasure
welcome.
talking with you today.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much for asking me to do this and being just, so interested in my book. So thanks for being with me along this journey. And I cannot wait to get the book out, and I hope you love it when you read it. So
Absolutely.
thank
I'm sure I
you.
will.
All
Thanks, Jillian.
right. Yeah, thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too.